Whoa, let's the sunshine. But yeah. Hola amiguis, what is good? It's me, it's Gabi, your girl. Welcome back to my channel and Happy New Year. Happy 2023. Wow. 2023. God damn. Well, anyway, what's up? It's me, it's Gabi, and if this is your first time to my channel, welcome. I'm Gabi, an interdisciplinary Boricua artist and performer, and I love posting old school YouTube videos, makeup tutorials, DIYs, vlogs, day of my life, things like that. And this year I want to do more book related content. I want to get into the booktube moment, you know, but not really, just like my booktube moment. Wow, the sun is also like in and out, so it's gonna be in and out, you know. Anyway, I want to do more book related content, so I decided to share my top 5 reads from 2022. Last year I read 25 books, which, you know, in the grand scheme of things isn't that much, but for me it's enough. It's enough. I also joined Book of the Month last year as well, so thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring today's video. I'm just kidding. But Book of the Month, if you want to, my email is like in my info, you know what I'm saying? Hit me up. So I actually have a lot of physical copies of books, and I have a lot to read. So I'm no longer a Book of the Month member because it's just like expensive. Your girl can't afford it at this current moment in her life, in her trajectory. But it did introduce me to a whole bunch of debut authors, new authors, and now I have a whole bunch of physical hard copy covers of some of my favorite books that I've read. So I'm going to share them with you. Not all the books that I read last year were debuts. Some of them are 20 years old. So I have my top 5 out of the 25 that I read, and then there's 2 little honorable mentions as well. If you want to know what my top 5 reads from 2022 were, then let's get into it. So the first book I'm going to start with is the first book that I actually read in 2022, and it was the first book that I got from Book of the Month, and that is Olga Dies Dreaming by Xoxo Gonzalez. This book did debut last year in 2022. It is the debut novel from Xoxo Gonzalez. It is a contemporary fiction kind of romance book. So I gave this book 4.25 stars on Goodreads. Oh, you can follow me on Goodreads if you want. I don't really put too many reviews, but maybe I'll change that. Anyway, I was really excited about this book. One, the cover is gorgeous. This like almost collage silk screen kind of effect. And it's honorable mention because it was a little bit of a letdown. The synopsis of this book is that it is set in the backdrop of New York City in the months surrounding the most devastating hurricane to ever hit Puerto Rico, which was Hurricane Maria. Olga Dies Dreaming is a story that examines political corruption, prejudice, and homophobia, familial strife, and the very notion of the American dream, all while asking what it really means to weather a storm. I was really excited for multiple reasons to read this book. One, it was a debut novel, and I love supporting emerging and debut novels and authors. As like an aspiring novelist myself, it's like definitely something that, you know, is important to support and to see what somebody's debut novel really is. And also, oh my god, the lighting. And also I was really excited to read this book because it has Puerto Rican leads. Like, I haven't really seen that many books that has characters from the Puerto Rican diaspora as the principal characters. And also it deals with Hurricane Maria, and as somebody who experienced Hurricane Maria, I really was interested to see how it would be kind of written about within a novel. I really liked this book in general. I think the story is really interesting. We're following a brother and a sister, and we're also getting glimpses from their mother via letters that she sends them periodically. They obviously have a really bad relationship with their mother. Their father passed away from AIDS because he was a junkie, and to have kind of this, like, one could see it like a stereotypical family dynamic when it comes to like the Latina diaspora of, like, you know, one of the parents is addicted to drugs, the other parent is like not there. I think it could seem a little stereotypical, but the way in which Xoxo describes the characters and really kind of even writes the history of each of the parents really kind of gives you a good understanding of like who these people are or were in their father's case. And it just kind of anchors what again could look like a stereotypical family dynamic. It anchors it in a lot of authenticity and truth. And then the characters of the brother and sister is really interesting because, again, there's, you know, homophobia regarding one of them. One of them is a politician. One of them is a famous wedding planner to like the bougie. And you know, they're from Sunset Park, which is a currently gentrifying Brooklyn neighborhood that has a lot of people of color, particularly Puerto Rican community, living there. And so that's being spoken about. There's so many dynamics to like the Puerto Rican diaspora within New York in a really interesting way. I really enjoyed the character dynamic. I just wish that there was a little bit more care taken surrounding Hurricane Maria. It's kind of like not necessarily glossed over, but like time jumps, and you know, we don't necessarily get too much information about like what is happening on the island, and rightfully so. We're not on the island, we're in New York, so there was that disconnect that I was expecting a little bit more like presence and narrative surrounding Hurricane Maria on the island, and it wasn't there. Leaves a room for me to write that about in my novel. I really like this book. I think anybody who is interested in the Puerto Rican diaspora would really enjoy this book, because just the plot line for each of the characters, they're dealing with their own lives. They're in their mid-30s, they're trying to seek love, they're trying to figure out their careers. There's a lot going on, and then on top of that, they're dealing with their own strife amongst themselves as siblings, but then also with their mother, who is estranged. So I definitely would recommend it. Again, it's a gorgeous cover. I love the cover of this book. It's like simply gorgeous. 4.25 stars. I really liked this book, but it left me wanting more. The second book that I have on my honorable mentions is Kaikeya. So this book is a big fat juicy book, and it is a fantasy, like mythological retelling fiction, and it deals with a character who is the title character, Kaikeya, who is a part of the Ramayana. And I don't really know much about the Ramayana as like a epic. It's an epic, but this is like a retelling of that epic. And this is getting me really interested in that whole kind of genre of like mythological retelling. So it's definitely a book that piqued my interest, and I literally bought Ariadne, because I really liked the genre that this book is in. I gave this book 4.5 stars. I really liked it. It's another debut novel by Vaishnavi Patel, and again, it's so rich in lore. I really liked it, but let me give you a little synopsis of what this is about. A stunning debut, Kaikeya reimagines the life of the infamous queen from the Indian epic Ramayana. The only daughter of a king, Kaikeya watches as her mother is banished and her own worth is reduced to what marriage alliance she can secure. Although she was raised on stories of the might and benevolence of the gods, her prayers for help go unanswered. She turns to her mother's library and discovers a magic that is hers alone. With this power, Kaikeya transforms herself from an overlooked princess into a warrior, diplomat, and favored queen, determined to carve a better world for herself and the women around her. But when evils from her childhood stories threaten her world, the pact she has forged clashes with destiny the gods have chosen for her family. Kaikeya must decide if resistance is worth the destruction it will wreak, and what legacy she intends to leave behind. So there's a lot of feminism involved in this as well. There is some people who criticize this book because the author has very much like, it is a retelling and like she's gone off script, if you will, from the original epic, but like that's what we can do with art, especially things that were written thousands of years ago. It's okay to kind of like bring a new approach to it, especially when she's so open about like going off book and going off script when it comes to this novel. Anyway, I think that this is just so rich. This author, who is like currently a law student, I think that's like wild, but she just does such a gorgeous job of really the lore of it. And like, again, I knew nothing of the Ramayana, but like I feel like I got a really good understanding of it. You can tell where she's going off book, even though I'm not familiar with it. You can kind of tell because there is such presence of feminism, and it's not new information that the ancient world was very patriarchal and misogynistic, and the current world that we live in is still very much like that. So this is just giving a different perspective on like, what if women had powers that could help them escape the very narrow world that they were allowed to live and occupy within this society. And it's a great fantasy book also. It's just like, there's magic, there's gorgeous landscapes, and there's adventure. She's going on travels. I do wish there are some moments like in the war, like the war kind of ends really quickly, and like I wish that we could have gotten a little bit more of it. There are moments like that where where the author kind of begins to go into a battle or goes on an adventure or goes traveling for an extended period of time, and it kind of just jumps with out. I don't know, it leaves me wanting like to know a little bit more what happened in those scenarios. But other than that, I think this book is a really gorgeous book, and like I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars on Goodreads, and I so recommend it to anybody who's interested in, again, mythological retellings, feminism, and a little bit of romance. There's not too much romance in it, but there is a little bit of romance, and that is the other honorable mention. Am I doing all right explaining these books? I don't even know. I don't know. I rarely discuss books with people because like I don't know anybody who like reads as much as I do. Only recently have I like realized that one of my friends and I and my sister-in-law and I like we like the same kind of books. So I'm like starting to talk books with them, but like I don't ever like articulate my thoughts on a book really necessarily. Not even journaling, not even like writing a review or anything like that. So that's definitely something that I need to improve this year for sure. But yeah, I hope you're understanding my ramblings on these books. All right, so now we're getting into the top 5. So my 5th book of 2022 is one of the books that I listened to the audiobook for, and that is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I gave this book 5 stars. Actually, all of my top 5 I gave 5 stars. I should probably have made that clear. But yeah, this book, I'm really glad that I listened to the audiobook, so I highly recommend to listen to the audiobook for this one because it's Jeanette McCurdy and it's a performance, you know, and not in the sense that she's putting on or anything like that, but it's as if you're like sitting in the room with her as she's reading this, you know. It's really intimate. You can tell that she's getting really emotional in certain parts that are difficult probably for her to have to relive and read, but it is a ride. And then in other parts, she's so funny. Like the humor to heartache ratio is great, I think, in this book. And it's also a debut. This is her, I mean, it's her debut memoir. I mean, I don't know how many memoirs people are supposed to come out with, but it is her debut in the written genre medium. And this book is wild. It obviously is talking about her childhood, growing up with her mom who was abusive to her, and her time in Nickelodeon, which was also abusive. It talks about her eating disorders and some relationships that she's had that weren't great, and it also talks about some addictions that she's had. So it's not a light book by any means. I mean, the title is I'm Glad My Mom Died, but it's an incredible read, and I definitely recommend anybody who likes memoirs to read it. I recommend anybody who was like an iCarly and like Sam Cat fan to read it. Like that was past my time or after my time. I knew her face and things like that, but I don't really know who she was. But I had seen videos kind of talking about her time on Nickelodeon and like who she refers to as the creator, who is like problematic to say the very least. And it talks about how she's like gained control and like how is now in a very much healthier mental, emotional, and spiritual place in her life. And it's just incredibly vulnerable, and I'm sure sadly people can relate to this on multiple levels. Her life is quite incredible and spans so many traumas and heartaches that, you know, in her sharing it, I'm sure a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds can find some area that they can resonate with. So really recommend this book. Again, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and it's amazing. I don't have a physical copy because I listened to it, but that is Glad My Mom Died. My number 4 choice from 2022 is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid's. This book debuted in 2019, and it's definitely not one of Taylor Jenkins Reid's first books. She has a lot of books. The first one that I read of hers was in 2021, and it was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. And I'm actually really glad that I read that book before I read this book, because I don't think I would have liked that book as much after reading this one. This book is a historical fiction. It is a contemporary, and it has romance. Those are the genres that I would put it in. Again, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And this book is about Daisy Jones and the Six, a famous rock band from the 70s that broke up and nobody knows why. And this is a book written in interview format, interviewing all of the bandmates and just their trajectory as a band and why they broke up. It is amazing. It is amazing. It is fun. This book really got me into the historical fiction kind of like genre, similar to Kakea and the mythical retelling. Historical fiction, like how fun. How fun. This book, I listened to it on audiobook because as I was like looking at it, I was like, this is an interview and that's fucking dope. I want to hear this. And it has Benjamin Bratt as like the main dude. I can't remember most of the people on the audiobook, but it's like every single character. There's at least like a dozen characters in this book. maybe there's less, but I think there's around a dozen characters and they're all different actors. And it just feels like almost like a podcast, like you're listening to a scripted podcast. Highly recommend listening to it. Also having it physically because it's just like such a dope book. Like one of my favorite guilty pleasure movies is with Jennifer Aniston and Mark Wahlberg, and like literally I'm blanking on the name, but it's about a rock band. It might be called Rock Band, but I love it. Like I don't know what it is about like 70s and 80s like rock bands that are just so, I don't know, it just interests me so much. Like I love the stories and the lore behind it all. I mean, there was like a lot of gross things happening in those days too, but this particular book, like you can imagine that this actually happened, you know, and there's just like a lore behind it. It was a very cool book to read, and I really just love the overall format of this book. It's so dope and it's a great story, so highly recommend if you like historical fiction, romance, and 1970s glam rock, you know. My third, I was like, wait, is this third or fourth? No. So my third favorite book of 2022 that I read is Kristen Hanna's The Four Winds. This is her book from 2021. It is obviously not a debut. She also has like dozens of books. This book, I love 1970s and 80s rock, but this book is a historical fiction, familial saga, a little bit of romance, but it takes place during the Dust Bowl era, which to me is like a fascinating era in history because it literally could have been avoided. But anyway, I digress. This book is about our heroine Elsa, her daughter, and her husband, and their decision to move from Texas to California during the Dust Bowl era to try to like literally survive and not die from famine. This descriptions of this book, Kristen Hanna, this is not the only book that I read of hers this year. I also read The Great Alone, which is about a family going to Alaska. Kristen Hanna just knows how to write families. She knows how to write families, and she knows how to write women. She knows how to write mothers and daughters, because those relationships are quite difficult and they're riddled with so much appreciation and resentment and love and strife, but she knows how to really write these characters. They're so rich, they're so like real. And this book in particular, again, if you liked Oregon Trail, I think you might like this book. Not to say that Oregon Trail has anything to do with this book, but they mention it. Like the last time this amount of people moved to the West was during the Oregon Trail. And you know, as like a millennial who played the Oregon Trail and like freaking loved it, I don't know, it was just like nostalgic in a way to think about that. But this book is so good, and the ending is like so heartbreaking, and it's so cinematic. All of these books, I think what I really love about all the books that I chose is that they're all very cinematic. I can imagine that each of them being movies or TV series, like easy. But The Four Winds, definitely my favorite out of the two Kristen Hanna books that I read, was the first of the two books of hers that I read. And it's just, it won Book of the Year for a reason, you know? This book won awards for a reason. It's just beautiful and heartbreaking. Love it. Oh, Daisy Jones also won Book of the Month in 2019. You know, Book of the Month, Book of the Year. My second favorite book of 2022 is also a book that I listened to in audio format, so I don't have the physical copy, and that is Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. So Jurassic Park is unironically my favorite movie, along with The Shining, for completely different reasons, but I love Jurassic Park. I can quote Jurassic Park. I literally want to walk down the aisle to like the theme of Jurassic Park, like on a French horn. Like, I love Jurassic Park, unironically, but I had never read the book, and I was like going to my friend's wedding in New Orleans, and I wanted a book to listen to on the plane, and I was like, you know what, I've never read Jurassic Park, and yet I love the movie so much. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna like the book as much. We'll see. The book, I'm so happy that the movie is not like a verbatim copy paste of the book. The movie and the book really truly stand alone. There's obviously so many similarities, but the book ends so much differently. The book is much more gory. The book has so much more science involved, and like the movie obviously shows science and all that jazz. But anyway, you know what Jurassic Park is about. I don't have to give you a synopsis, but Michael Crichton just knows how to write science. He does it so well. He researches so thoroughly, and as somebody who's like into science, my dad's a doctor, so like I kind of grew up liking science and medicine and all of that. It was so cool to like read this book and get so much more sci-fi from it than the movie. The movie is definitely more like adventure than it is sci-fi, and the book is a little bit more sci-fi. It was just such a fun read. Again, it's very different from the movie. The ending is completely different. So many more people die in the book than they do in the movie. It's wild. It's wild. Like, you literally finish this book and you think the main character that is like in the later movies like heavily, you think he's dead, but he's not. Anyway, I really, really love this book. I could listen to it again. And after I finished it, I literally listened to The Lost World. So really love those books. But yeah, my second favorite book was Jurassic Park. And again, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And that brings us to our final book of the year. And this was actually the last book I read in 2022. Before that, Jurassic Park could have taken to the top. I could have. But then I read Gabrielle Zevin's Tomorrow, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow. Also, look at this cover. Like, what? This cover is so gorgeous. This book is a historical fiction. Again, I love historical fiction. What can I say? What can I say? What can I say? This book is a historical fiction book that came out this year. So it came out in 2022. And it is historical fiction, a little bit of like techno, contemporary, and a bit of romance is all in this book. This book is about 2 childhood friends who met at a hospital and then reconnected when they were in college on the other side of the US. So they're from California and they went to school in New England, and they rekindle their friendship. Then they decide to start designing video games because that's how they started their friendship. They just loved video games, and they become video game designers, and it spans 30 years of their lives. And like, the way I couldn't stop thinking about this book after I finished. It is so cinematic. The characters are so nuanced and damaged and real, and it deals with a lot of very interesting topics. An intricately imagined novel that examines the multifarious nature of identity, disability, failure, the redemptive possibilities in play, and above all, our need to connect, to be loved, and to love. And it is a love story, but it is a love story that is not one that you probably read before. I cannot stop talking about this book to anybody. I keep recommending it to everyone because it is just, it's a really unisex book. Like, I think women and men are gonna, and everyone is gonna love this book. Yeah, I really just love this book, and I highly recommend if you're into, like, yeah, technology, if you're into video games, if you want a little bit of romance, if you like books that span multiple decades, and you like a book about friendship and love, highly recommend Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And that is it. Those are my top favorite books of 2022 plus 2 honorable mentions. Let me know down in the comments if you read any of them, what you think. Let me know if you recommend any books based off the ones that I talked about today that you think I might like. Let me know what you're reading now. I'm currently reading One Last Stop by Casey McHugh. I'm literally in my romance girly era right now, and I've already read 4 romance novels in the month of January alone. So if you have any other romance books that you want to throw my way, recommend my way, let me know. Comment it down below. I'm also currently, what am I doing this year? I'm designing a digital planner, and that should be out soon. So if that's something that you're interested in, let me know down below. I will link you to like where I plan to sell it. And if you have any recommendations on digital planners, like pages to design, or if you are into that, let me know. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you like today's video, and hit the like button because, you know, it helps us out. It helps the algorithm. It helps people find this video in case they're like-minded and want some book recommendations. You know what I'm saying? And remember to take a breath, drink some water. I believe in you, and I am sending you so much light, peace, and mucho, mucho, mucho amor. Happy 2023! Hasta la próxima! See you in the next video. Enough rambling, right? I don't know. Am I rambling too much? I don't know. I haven't filmed a video in so long. Oh, goodbye, son. Jesus.